Hi, I'm Karen Davis. I'm the author of Sinister Intent, and today I'm here to take you on a tour around Sydney, show you some of the places I worked while I was a police officer and some of the events that happened in those places that inspired me when I was writing my book. So come with me, let's go. Here we are at Newtown Police Station. This is where I started from the Police Academy in 1987 as a probationary constable. I spent 6 years here, and in those 6 years I saw an awful lot. The cast of characters that were in the area at the time were very entertaining and kept us very busy. Most shifts were flat out, we didn't even get a meal break. So it was a good place to learn, and I really enjoyed my time here at Newtown. And a lot of my stories from my book were inspired from the events that I encountered while I was here. The Newtown of today is very different to the Newtown I used to know. Back then it was a much different area, a lot rougher, and we had a diverse population that made sure that we were kept very busy. We were going to jobs from anything from a drug overdose 1 minute, we had a big drug problem in the area at that time, to a break and enter, to a fatal car accident, and then to a murder. And then possibly back to a break and enter after that. So no 2 days were the same, and no 2 days were ever boring. We're at beautiful Bondi Beach, where my main character, Lexi Rogers, works just up the road at the fictional Bondi Junction Detective's office. When we first meet Lexi, she's just returned to work after a violent knife attack that's left her emotionally and physically scarred. Like Lexi, I was a detective, so when I started to create her character, I knew what I wanted her to be like, and I knew what a day in the life of a detective was like. Lexi is one of my favourite characters. She's tough, she's smart, and she is affected by what she's been through because she is only human, but she's not going to let fear stand in her way. We're at Camperdown Cemetery. This is a place that I attended many times. Lots of things would happen in this place, including drug deals, people taking drugs. There were parties often happened in this cemetery. Most shifts we would get called here at least once to break up some kind of party on a Saturday night. Often there were assaults because homeless people actually slept in here because they thought it was a safe haven away from the main street of King Street. I've actually caught a couple having sex during the middle of the day on one of the tombstones. Couldn't believe that one. But strange things happen in here. We've had a couple of suicides, unfortunately, and a lot of the things were drugs that took place in here. People come here to drink, get drunk, and take drugs. So there was also grave robbers. We used to get lots of reports of people digging up graves, which I could never understand, but that happened quite often, although I never actually caught anybody digging up a grave. And the diversity of things that people would do in here in a place where you'd think would be quite peaceful were quite eye-opening. There are 2 fictional bikie gangs in Sinister Intent, the Devil's Guardians and the Assassins. They're rivals and they've been at war for a very long time. So when one of the Devil's Guardians members is murdered, the obvious suspicion falls upon the Assassins. So Lexi and her team of detectives begin a murder investigation, and as they uncover what's going on, they realise that they're actually up against a race against time to find the killer before a full-scale bikie war breaks out, resulting in more violence and possibly dead bodies. I've had many dealings with bikies in my time as a police officer. My main characters are Rex Donaldson and Max Croft. They are opposing sergeant-at-arms of the opposite gangs, and they are a combination of many bikies, different individuals I've come across over my time, and put them together to build up their characters, their physical attributes and their personality traits. The idea for one of the scenes in the book where Lexi and her team of detectives are doing a search warrant on the Devil's Guardians clubhouse actually comes from a real life incident that my colleagues were involved in years ago. While doing the same thing, a search warrant on a bikie clubhouse, one of the bikies, a sergeant-at-arms, a very, very large man, suddenly lost it and became very violent. Everything had been going very well up until then, but for whatever reason he became enraged and he picked up a full-size fridge, quite unbelievable, but this did happen, and threw it at my colleagues. Very, very large man I'm talking about, so as you can imagine with a fridge. Luckily they all dived out of the way and nobody was injured. But I thought this was a classic example of how something so controlled and organised could go very quickly wrong and turn into a life-threatening situation, and that's what I was trying to get across in that scene. Okay, I'm outside the Glebe Morgue, which is a place most police have to visit every now and then to identify a body or to witness an autopsy in regards to an investigation. First time I came here was when I was a 19-year-old probationer, 4 days out of the police academy, and part of our induction and training was to witness an autopsy. On the day me and my academy buddies were due to come here, we were lucky enough to actually have 8 autopsies to witness. So that was a big eye-opener, first time I'd ever seen a dead body. And once getting through that process of seeing the autopsy without fainting or worse, I was actually encouraged by a morgue attendant to go into the freezer that houses up to about 340 bodies at any one time, and just have a look around, familiarise myself with the surroundings and get used to seeing dead bodies, because that was a part of the police force, that's part of the job. But unfortunately he thought it was funny to play a joke on me and shut the doors and turn the lights out once I was inside. So, freezing cold and surrounded by God knows how many dead bodies, I was trapped in the morgue for probably only a short time, but it was enough to make an impact. In my book, Lexi has a very similar experience which is inspired by what I went through here. Like Lexi, I was assaulted when I was a police officer at Newtown, and one of the scariest things that happened to me happened right here on this corner, where I was actually called to a job where a man had been stabbed. When I attended, he had a knife sticking out of his stomach and I was actually assisting him. But unfortunately he had a couple of sons with him who had been drinking and they were intoxicated, and one of them smashed a beer bottle on the curb over there and held it to my throat, got me in a headlock and put it to my throat and threatened to kill me. I couldn't understand this at the time because I was actually trying to assist his father, but there's no reasoning with somebody who's drug affected or alcohol affected, and he was both. So we called a Signal 1, which is, police drop everything, someone's in danger, and cars came from everywhere. Luckily my partner was able to call for help and assistance arrived before I could sustain any injuries. The offender was taken back to the station and charged by my colleagues, and his father, who'd been stabbed, was taken to the hospital and was later released and was fine. I, on the other hand, went back to the station and was given a cup of tea, even though I wanted something much stronger than that. There was no time for that because I was on to my next job, which was a drug overdose. In my book there's a character called Sandy, and Sandy was inspired by a girl that I got to know very well when I was working at Newtown. She was a local identity, a very harmless character. Unfortunately she was a drug addict, but she was very well known to all the police in the area, and we kind of kept an eye out on her and looked after her a little bit. My first meeting with her actually was in this laneway just behind me. It's changed a little bit since 25 years ago, but she was my first experience of seeing a drug overdose. We were doing a routine patrol of the area, and we came across her unconscious body lying in the gutter, and I really didn't think there was going to be any hope for her. I remember being very scared and thinking that she was probably going to die right in front of me. I didn't know that at 19 that Narcan existed. And the ambulance arrived and gave her an injection of this magical stuff called Narcan, and within about 10 minutes she was stumbling away as if her near-death experience had never really occurred. Unfortunately I was going to see a lot more of this kind of thing in my years in the police force. It was just really another day, another drug addict. Unfortunately that same girl who I'd seen, the first drug overdose I'd seen, I found again here in this same lane some years later. But this time we hadn't got here in time, and unfortunately she had passed away by the time we located her, and she was only 18 at the time of her death. It was very sad. Okay, this is the Courthouse Hotel. This is a place we spent lots of time in after a busy shift. It's a place that we came to debrief, share our war stories and talk about the events of the night or the day, and basically just let off steam and relax a little bit. So as you can imagine, there were some big nights here, and a lot of romances were started here as well. Police tend to stick together in that way. We work long hours, we see some traumatic things, and it's good to talk to somebody else who understands exactly what you've seen. And that's kind of why a lot of police end up together. In Sinister Intent, Lexi meets the gorgeous Detective Sergeant Josh Harrison, and let's just say they really steam up the pages together. say probably the worst thing about being a cop is some of the traumatic things you see. I saw a lot of death in my career, and unfortunately that kind of comes back to bite you, and it does haunt you later on. One of the things that inspired me to write a scene in the book was an experience I went to very early on in my career, and that was we were called to a job where a lady had been set on fire. I attended with another young probationary constable, and we weren't sure what to expect on arrival at this scene. We were told a lady was actually on fire in a backyard. We didn't think it could be real, but unfortunately when we got there, that's exactly what was happening. She'd tied a rope around her waist and put petrol all over herself and lit the rope and watched the flames come towards her until she'd obviously caught on fire and a neighbour put her out. By the time we got there, she was standing in the middle of the backyard and she was completely naked except for the rope around her middle, which I actually thought was a belt when I first saw it. And she was just standing there talking to us. It was quite a surreal experience. I got a blanket from somewhere, I don't even remember where I got it from, wrapped it around her until the ambulance got there, and I spoke to her calmly for a little while. I wasn't real calm myself, but tried to talk to her for as long as I could. It was probably only a matter of minutes before the ambulance got there and they took over and started, doing what they do best. Best thing about being a cop is definitely the sense of satisfaction you get when you know you've actually helped somebody, even in the smallest way. To have helped somebody and to think that you've made a little tiny difference to someone's life when they've needed you, that is all the reward I need. Also, the other best thing I'd say is when you've worked a case for a very long time and you're after your man or your woman, and it all comes together at the end, you get an arrest, you get a result, and you put a pedophile away, put a drug dealer off the street, lock up a murderer. You can't beat that feeling. That's why I became a cop.